Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. Instead of wading through, mountains of data and different reports, we're focusing on a single, incredibly powerful piece of source material.
That's right. And this text was shared by a listener. It's a masterclass, really, in how to handle a crisis.
So our whole analysis today is going to be a precise excavation.
Yeah.
Not going wide, but going very, very deep into one text.
And that text is Psalm 142. It's just so raw. It charts this journey of a man who he's lost everything. He's cornered, he's afraid, and yet this is where he finds the ultimate lifeline.
Exactly. And our mission here is pretty clear. We're going to extract the core insights, the instructional parts of this one desperate cry. And our entire framework for this comes from the analysis provided by the You Need Faith in Jesus team.
Right. They've laid out this incredible model based on David's prayer. It's a model for honest, urgent prayer for when when it feels like a prison, whether that's a literal one or a spiritual one.
And to really get it, you have to understand the context, don't you? This wasn't written in some ivory tower.
Oh, not at all. The source material is very clear on this. To appreciate the instruction, the mashil, as it's called, you have to first appreciate the agony. David was a fugitive. He was on the run.
On the run from King Saul, a king who was, consumed by this irrational, murderous jealousy.
Exactly. So David is hiding out in these huge wilderness caves. The source material suggests it could be Adullam, which you can read about in 1 Samuel chapter 22, or maybe the caves of En-Gedi from 1 Samuel chapter 24.
And that context is it's vital, because it strips away all the pretense, doesn't it?
Completely. This is not a theoretical exercise in faith. This is life or death. It's breath-by-breath survival.
Just try to picture it. You're in this massive, cold cave. Water's dripping somewhere in the dark. It smells like damp earth. And you're not alone. You've got maybe hundreds of your followers crammed in there with you.
Right, making the air thick, claustrophobic. And just outside that cave opening are the soldiers of the most powerful man in the nation. And their only job is to find you and kill you.
It's the ultimate crucible, as they say. He has nothing left. No political power, no military advantage, no comfort.
All that's left is him, his fear, and this one decision. Where am I going to turn? And the prayer that comes out of that moment, that's the blueprint. It's the blueprint for anyone who has ever felt trapped, isolated, and just completely, utterly desperate.
So let's start where the text starts, with the title. It seems so simple, but the analysis from the You Need Faith in Jesus team really insists that we can't just skip over it.
No, you really can't. It's the key that unlocks the whole thing. The title reads, Masil of David, a prayer when he was in the cave.
Okay, so let's break that down. Masil, that's not a word we use every day. What is the significance there? Why not just call it a song or a psalm?
Well, a masil is so much more than just a song. The term itself means that what follows is intended to provide profound instruction or understanding or insight.
So it's not just an emotional outburst, it's a lesson.
It's a lesson plan. That's a great way to put it. David wasn't just, screaming into the void. He was consciously, deliberately constructing a lesson for people in the future who would face the same kind of crisis.
That is just staggering to think about. He's in the worst moment of his life. He's being hunted like an animal. He could be executed at any second. And in that moment, he has the spiritual clarity to think, this experience can teach someone else.
It completely reframes how you read the text, doesn't it? It goes from being a private diary entry to a public piece of teaching on spiritual discipline. The You Need Faith in Jesus team comes back to this point again and again. Even in his deepest distress, David knew this raw, urgent conversation with God was a skill, a necessary skill that others would need to learn.
To navigate their own caves.
Exactly, their own spiritual caves.
Right.
Which brings us to the second part of the title.
Right. A prayer when he was in the cave. You touched on the physical reality of it, the darkness, the cold. But why stamp that context right onto the title? Why is the where so important?
Because it grounds the instruction, the mashil, in a harsh reality. It stops us from turning it into some vague spiritual platitude. The cave is the ultimate symbol of being trapped, physically, mentally, politically.
It's an environment that just crushes human strength.
Yeah.
And forces you to be dependent on something else.
And that's the power of the juxtaposition, right? You've got this instruction manual, the mashil, being written during the ultimate stress test, the cave.
It's like he's saying, if this method of prayer works here, under this kind of extreme pressure, it'll work anywhere.
Absolutely. The source material we have really encourages you, the listener, to meditate on the sensory experience of that cave. It's a place with no light, sound gets distorted and echoes back at you. Time probably feels like it's standing still, and danger is just everywhere.
So by being so specific about the location, David is confirming this is an unfiltered, raw response to mortal danger and being utterly alone.
And if we miss that literal context, we miss the whole spiritual application. We have to remember this was the future king of Israel, the giant slayer. And he's been reduced to hiding in a hole in the ground like a hunted animal.
That vulnerability, that's the prerequisite for the power of the prayer that follows, isn't it? He's been stripped of every single human defense he had.
Which is the connection point for us. The material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team guides us to connect that ancient crisis to your life today. You might not be a fugitive hiding from a king.
But you felt trapped. You've been in a cave.
Yeah.
That's the question this Masil's forces on you. What is your cave? Is it, I don't know, the weighted depression that cuts you off from everyone?
It could be, or the crushing pressure of debt that makes you feel like you can't even leave your house. Maybe it's a legal battle that just goes on, or a chronic illness that isolates you from your friends, your support system.
Right. The cave is any situation where you feel totally trapped, surrounded by trouble, and just profoundly alone.
And this mashil, this instruction, it's a structured, time-tested method for turning that isolation into instruction, that confinement into connection with God. It's the spiritual game plan for when you hit rock bottom.
So with that framework established, let's dive into the prayer itself. The first two verses are all about execution. It's about vocalization and just sheer, unfiltered honesty.
Yes. Let's start with verse 1. And the repetition here is just so striking. Let me read it. It's Psalm 142, verse 1 from the King James Version. It says, I cried unto the Lord with my voice. With my voice unto the Lord did I make my supplication.
With my voice. He says it twice. That's not just flowery language, is it? It's emphasizing the physicality of this. Why was it so important for him to use his actual physical voice?
Because it commits the body to the act of faith. I mean, think about it. He's using his lungs, his vocal cords. He is pouring physical energy into making that sound. He's holding absolutely nothing back.
And in a dark, echoing cave, the sound of your own voice would be this tangible proof, this declaration that you believe someone is listening, someone beyond the rock walls.
It's a profound act of desperate engagement. If you are barely hanging on, the physical effort it takes to audibly cry out is a powerful statement of belief.
It's the total opposite of, quiet meditative prayer. This is immediate, it's loud, it's urgent. And the material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team points out that this was a habit for David. It wasn't just a one-off panic response.
That's right. The sources confirm this pattern. They point us to another crisis in his life, which he recorded in Psalm 3, verse 4. In the King James Version, it says, I cried unto the Lord with my voice, and he heard me out of his holy hill.
And that cross-reference is so important. It establishes a track record. David knew from past experience that when trouble hits, the first step is to voice the need. It's not a desperate gamble. It's a proven method.
Right. The moment you feel overwhelmed, you stop relying on just silent thoughts, and you actively start vocalizing your petition.
The practical application here is, well, it's huge, especially for anyone who struggles with feeling like their prayers have to be perfect or formal.
It just cuts right through that idea that prayer has to be quiet and controlled and, perfectly reverent all the time.
I think so many of us feel like we have to clean up our prayers, sanitize them, like we might inconvenience God with our messy, raw emotion.
But this verse 1, gives us explicit permission to be that desperate. God invites our raw, honest, even loud cries for help. In those moments of deep, crushing distress, when you feel that pressure building inside, voicing your prayer does two things.
What are they?
First, it releases all that pent-up emotional energy. It's a safety valve. And second, it tangibly focuses your faith on an external deliverer. It's a spiritual discipline that actually uses your body in the process of believing.
And that vocal urgency flows right into the radical honesty of the next verse. It's not just that he cried out, it's what he said.
Exactly. Let's read Psalm 142, verse 2 from the King James Version. I poured out my complaint before him. I showed before him my trouble.
The imagery there, poured out. It's so powerful. We're not talking about just presenting a neat little summary of your problems. This is like upending a bucket of water.
Right.
Everything comes out. All the fears, the frustrations, the exhaustion, the confusion.
He holds nothing back. And notice the word he uses. He calls it his complaint. Now, in modern English, complaint can sound a bit petty, maybe a little whiny.
Sure.
But the original Hebrew word has this connotation of a deep, earnest lamentation. It's an airing of grievances, an expression of profound sorrow and distress. David isn't worried about offending God with how ugly his feelings are.
Ye understood. as the You Need Faith in Jesus team points out, that the only path to real fellowship with God is paved with complete, radical openness. You can't hide the complaint, because if you do, you're hiding the source of the pain. And you can't get healing for a wound you pretend isn't there.
It just removes that burden of performance. You're in a cave, they're just trying to survive, and survival requires total transparency.
This idea of pouring out everything, it wasn't unique to David, was it?
Not at all. It was seen as the gold standard for prayer in desperate times. The source material gives us a great cross-reference to the prophet Jeremiah. During the destruction of Judah, a truly dark time, Jeremiah wrote in Lamentations chapter 2, verse 19.
Let me guess. He used similar language.
Almost identical. The King James Version says, "Arise, cry out in the night, pour out thine heart like water before the face of the Lord."
Pour out thine heart like water. That's the perfect image. Water doesn't hold anything back. It just empties the container completely.
So the takeaway for you, the listener, and this is reinforced constantly by the You Need Faith in Jesus team material, is that you have permission. You have explicit permission to be completely real with God.
You don't have to edit your prayers to sound more spiritual.
Exactly. Show him the full, messy reality of your trouble. Express your grievances, your complaints. You have to trust that he's a loving father who can handle the full weight of your burdens. He is not fragile.
And that complete, transparent honesty is what clears the air, so to speak. It's the necessary first step before he can move on to what he does next.
Which brings us to verse 3. And this verse is a pivot. It's where David puts his own internal chaos right up against God's perfect, objective knowledge.
Let's read the full quote. This is Psalm 142, verse 3, in the King James Version. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then thou knewest my path. In the way wherein I walked, have they privily laid a snare for me.
This might be the most psychologically insightful verse in the whole psalm. He starts with this stark admission about his internal state.
When my spirit was overwhelmed.
Right, and that word for overwhelmed in the Hebrew, it suggests being shrouded in darkness, fainting, even suffering a mental collapse. From David's human perspective, inside that cave, the situation is confusing, terrifying, and just. Utterly hopeless.
So he's not pretending to be strong. He's not putting on a brave face. He's admitting, I'm drowning here.
Yes. He acknowledges the reality of his despair. But look at the structure of the sentence. The pivot is instantaneous. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then thou knewest my path.
That's the lifeline. That's the core teaching of this mashal, isn't it? Faith isn't the absence of feeling overwhelmed.
Not at all. Faith is the radical choice to remember God's unshakable knowledge while you are being overwhelmed. David couldn't see a single step ahead, but he trusted that God could see the entire path of his life from beginning to end. God is not confused by the chaos that is confusing David.
And that trust is immediately put to the test because he acknowledges the threat is real. He says his enemies have privily laid a snare for me. What's the significance of the snare being laid privily or secretly?
Well, a snare is a trap. It's designed to catch you when you're not expecting it, to ambush you. It represents deceit, hidden malice, things you don't see coming. You can fight an enemy you can see. A secret snare is terrifying because you can't.
And when you apply that to our lives, the snare could be an unexpected health diagnosis, a betrayal from someone you trusted, a sudden economic downturn that just wipes you out.
Exactly. Threats that are built in secret and then sprung on you. And the power of David's declaration is this. Even if the enemy successfully hides the trap from me, the trap isn't hidden from God. God sees it being set. He knows exactly when it will be sprung. And he already knows my path through it or around it.
So the certainty of divine knowledge it diffuses the paralysis that comes from fear of the unknown.
It does. And this complete trust in God's omniscience is backed up beautifully by a foundational scripture that the source material points to. We can see it in Psalm 139, verses 2 and 3.
Can you read that for us?
Of course. From the King James Version. Thou knowest my downsitting and mine uprising, and art acquainted with all my ways.
Wow. Acquainted with all my ways. That's so intimate. It's not just that God knows where David is in the cave.
No, he knows his most mundane activities, his downsitting when he's resting or despairing or just sitting in silence, and his uprising when he's active, making plans, trying to have hope. God is intimately acquainted with every single part of his life.
So every strategic meeting he held in that cave, every tear he shed in the dark, every decision he agonized over, God already knew it. That's the theological bedrock that allows him to pivot so quickly from feeling overwhelmed to declaring certainty.
It is. If God is acquainted with all my ways, then the hidden snare loses its terror.
The practical application here, and the sources from the You Need Faith in Jesus team are so clear on this, it's a direct antidote to anxiety, to confusion.
It really is. When your own spirit is overwhelmed by the complexity of life, the constant emails, the family demands, the 24/7 news cycle, it is so easy to feel lost and shrouded in darkness.
And our default thinking is often that maybe our situation is just too complicated, that the chaos in our lives is finally too tangled for even God to sort out.
But this mushal gives you that crucial lifeline. When your spirit is overwhelmed, you have to find peace by declaring that God is not overwhelmed. He knows your path perfectly. He sees every hidden trap, every single snare.
It's the moment you stop trying to manage the crisis with your own limited information and start resting in God's infinite information.
It's an active choice. When your internal monologue is just screaming confusion, David's model tells you to speak a declaration of certainty. My spirit is fainting, but you know my path.
That choice, that profound choice in verse 3, it sets the stage for what comes next, which is maybe the most devastating but ultimately the most redemptive part of the whole song.
We're moving now into verse 4, and this is the moment of absolute rock bottom, the psychological trauma of total abandonment.
Let's read it. It's Psalm 142, verse 4, from the King James Version. It says, I looked on my right hand and beheld, but there was no man that would know me. Refuge failed me. No man cared for my soul.
This is it's a portrait of crushing loneliness. To really get the weight of this, you have to understand the cultural context of the right hand.
Right. In ancient culture, the right hand was the place of honor. It's where your defender would stand in battle, your most trusted ally. So when David says he looked to his right hand, he's actively searching for his support system.
He's looking for his backup, the people he led, the people he fought for, and what does he find?
Nothing. Absolute emptiness. He says, refuge failed me. Every human source of help, every escape plan, every friend who swore loyalty, it's all gone.
Which leads to what I think is the most heartbreaking line in the entire psalm. It's this raw, personal conclusion. No man cared for my soul.
That phrase goes so much deeper than just being physically alone. It's a spiritual and emotional abandonment. To be a leader, a person of consequence, and to realize in your lowest moment that literally no one cares about your core being, your soul, that is the ultimate loneliness.
It is, and yet the sources from the You Need Faith in Jesus team really emphasize this. There is a profound divine purpose hidden inside this failure. David's reliance on human help had to be completely burned away.
If a friend had shown up or if one of his plans had worked, he might have relied on that. He might have missed the lesson he was about to learn.
Exactly. Sometimes human failure, as painful as it is a necessary invitation to lean entirely on the divine. You only learn that God is enough when you're in a situation where he's all you have.
And this wasn't a unique experience to David, was it? We see this pattern elsewhere in Scripture.
We do. The source material highlights a powerful parallel in the New Testament with the Apostle Paul. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 16, Paul is writing about his own trial, and he says...
What does he say?
He says, "At my first answer, no man stood with me, but all men forsook me."
The parallel is stunning. Two of the greatest figures in the Bible, David and Paul, both had to go through a moment where every single human support system collapsed underneath them.
And that universal experience teaches us something, right? It teaches us that God sometimes allows our support systems, our friends, our family, our finances, to fall away. So we learn that human refuge can and will fail, but God's refuge never will.
And it's that painful realization that human bankruptcy that drives the most important conscious choice in the entire prayer, the pivot in verse 5.
Yes. Having hit rock bottom in verse 4, David doesn't just wallow in it. He makes a powerful, deliberate, conscious act of will in verse 5.
I'll read it. Psalm 142, verse 5, from the King James Version. I cried unto thee, O Lord. I said, Thou art my refuge and my portion in the land of the living.
Do you see the shift? He shifts his gaze, and more importantly, his spoken declaration from his empty right hand, the symbol of human failure, to the Lord. He doesn't just feel it. He doesn't just think it. He says it.
He's defining his new reality, not based on the chaos around him, but based on the unchanging character of God. He declares, Thou art my refuge. And then he uses that incredible word, portion.
Let's unpack portion. That word is so rich with meaning. It's rooted in the Old Testament in the way the Promised Land was divided among the tribes of Israel.
The Levites, the priestly tribe, they didn't get any land, did they?
No, they didn't. And God told them why. He said, I am your portion. It meant they didn't rely on land or crops or business like the other tribes. Their security, their wealth, their very sustenance came directly from God himself.
So David is making that exact same declaration here. Everything earthly has failed him. The palace, the army, his friends. And he's saying, okay, God himself is now my inheritance. my source of value, my satisfaction.
And he anchors it in the present, doesn't he? He says, in the land of the living.
Mhm.
This isn't just about hope for the afterlife. He's saying, right now, in this cave, in this desperate reality, God is my sustaining share.
It's a conscious realignment of loyalty. The material from the You Need Faith in Jesus team connects this to another song, doesn't it?
Yes, Psalm 73, verse 26. The King James Version reads, "My flesh and my heart faileth, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever."
My flesh and my heart faileth. That's exactly what happened to David in verse 4. And the answer is the same. God is my portion.
The practical application from the You Need Faith in Jesus team here is, it's arguably the most powerful action step in the entire Missale. When you, the listener, feel abandoned, when you feel like every human system has failed you, your job, your health, your relationships, you have to make the same choice.
You can't wait for the feeling of despair to go away before you act. The instruction is to act, to open your mouth and declare who God is, no matter what your emotions are screaming at you.
That's the command. God, you are my refuge. Jesus, you are my portion. That act of speaking truth actively realigns your spirit. It's a deliberate pivot from despair to hope, even before a single thing in your personal cave has changed.
So having made that profound declaration of dependence in verse 5, David can now move on to his specific request for help in verse 6. And this part is just steeped in humility, a humility that actually unlocks God's power.
Yes, he doesn't make his request based on his own merit. He makes it based on his total lack of ability. Let's read Psalm 142, verse 6 from the King James Version. "Attend unto my cry, for I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I."
There are two huge admissions of inadequacy there. First, I am brought very low. He's not minimizing his condition, he's just stating the brutal truth. He's exhausted, spent, besieged.
And the second admission is even more shocking, coming from him. They are stronger than I. I mean, this is David, the warrior, the giant slayer. And here he is admitting he is completely outmatched by his enemies.
He's not playing the hero. He's a man at the absolute end of his own resources. Why is that admission so important? Why does it seem like God needs us to confess our weakness before he steps in?
Because true, biblical faith is never about our own ability to overcome. It's always about God's ability to deliver. David's faith isn't in himself, it's entirely in God. When he asks God to attend unto my cry, the original language suggests he's asking God to lean down, to pay close, careful, compassionate attention to his miserable situation.
It's like the cry of a child who knows they're trapped, and the only hope is to yell for a parent who is infinitely more capable.
Exactly. And the You Need Faith in Jesus team material shows how this principle, this counterintuitive principle of faith, connects directly to the New Testament, specifically to the Apostle Paul's foundational lesson in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9.
What did that verse say?
It's the Lord's statement to Paul. The King James Version says, "My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness."
My strength is made perfect in weakness. That just flips the entire script of our culture, doesn't it? Paul learned, and David modeled centuries earlier, that God's strength isn't a reward for our competence. It's deployed at the exact moment our own strength runs out.
The moment you can honestly say, "They are stronger than I," you create the space for God to step in and prove that he is stronger than all of them.
If you come to God saying, I've got this 80% covered, I just need you to top it up by 20%, then you get to keep 80% of the glory.
Right. But if you come to him saying, "I have 0%, they are stronger than I," then when the deliverance comes, it is unequivocally 100% God's victory.
And that's the critical takeaway from the You Need Faith in Jesus team. We have to model this radical humility. We don't have to pretend we're fine. In fact, when we admit we have been brought very low, and that our enemies, whether they're spiritual forces or difficult circumstances, are genuinely stronger than we are, we position ourselves perfectly to receive God's power.
It relieves that pressure to always be resilient. In this framework, surrender isn't failure. It's the necessary first step to a supernatural victory.
And that brings us to the final verse. Having moved through desperation, complaint, declaration, and humble petition, David closes this entire instruction manual with this incredible burst of confident hope in verse 7.
It's the culmination of the whole prayer. It shows the confident expectation that grows out of radical dependence. I'll read the last verse, Psalm 142, verse 7, from the King James Version. "Bring my soul out of prison, that I may praise thy name. The righteous shall compass me about, for thou shalt deal bountifully with me."
Okay, let's define the prison he's talking about. It's not just one thing, is it?
No, it's multifaceted. It's the literal prison of the cave, sure. But more than that, it's the spiritual and emotional prison of fear, isolation, and despair that was overwhelming his spirit back in verse 3. He's asking for total freedom.
But the reason he wants freedom,
Yeah.
that's the key insight here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the You Need Faith in Jesus team material really focuses on this. He says, bring my soul out of prison that I may praise thy name.
Yes. His ultimate goal isn't his own comfort. It's not safety. It's not even getting revenge on Saul. His ultimate goal is God's glory. His deliverance is just the pathway to public worship and testimony.
That completely changes how you view crisis. If our only motivation for asking for help is for our own personal ease, we're missing the whole point of David's model. David's freedom has a higher purpose.
His crisis becomes the raw material for corporate worship, and he includes those other people in his vision of the future. He says, "The righteous shall compass me about."
He sees a day when he's no longer isolated in that dark cave, where he felt like no man cared for my soul. Instead, he'll be surrounded, compassed about by a community of believers in open, free worship.
He understands that part of being restored is being put back into the body of believers. The pain of his isolation fuels his desire for community. And this longing for community is a constant theme throughout Scripture. The source material connects it to the New Testament, to Hebrews chapter 10, verse 25, from the King James Version, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. David's hope for the future wasn't just to survive alone. It was to worship together.
And then look at the absolute confidence of that last phrase. It's not a wish, it's not a suggestion, it's a declaration of faith.
For thou shalt deal bountifully with me.
That word, bountifully, it means generously, abundantly overflowing with goodness. He ends this desperate, raw prayer, not with the plea that God might help him,
but with a settled, confident assertion that God will help him, and will do so with massive generosity. This is pure faith. He's defining his reality based on God's character, not his current circumstances.
It's the highest form of hope. After admitting he's at his lowest point and his enemies are stronger, he knows that the only possible outcome of God's intervention is an overflowing, bountiful one.
And the You Need Faith in Jesus team provides such a powerful final application here. Your deliverance from your personal prisons is not just for you. It's to equip you, the listener, to praise God publicly and to encourage the entire body of Christ, that community that will one day compass you about.
So you can actually face your darkest moments with this confident hope that God won't just get you through it, but that he will deal bountifully with you. And that will lead to this amazing testimony of his faithfulness that encourages everyone around you.
The depth of the crisis simply sets the stage for the magnificent scale of the public praise that follows.
Okay, let's do a quick recap of this incredible journey through Psalm 142. This instructional prayer for crisis, as laid out by the You Need Faith in Jesus team. We followed David's model step by step. It started with that audible, honest crying, pouring out the complaint in verses 1 and 2.
Which led to that essential pivot in verse 3, acknowledging that you feel overwhelmed, but choosing to declare that God knows your path anyway. He sees every hidden snare.
Then we hit that emotional climax in verses 4 and 5. The total failure of human help. No man cared for my soul, which then forced that conscious declaration of divine reliance. Thou art my refuge and my portion.
And from that reliance came the humble petition in verse 6, where David admitted his weakness. I am brought very low, they are stronger than I. And finally, that vulnerability blossoms into the confident corporate hope of verse 7, asking for freedom not for comfort, but so that he could praise God's name among the righteous. It's a perfect cycle.
Before we go, we want to give you those actionable steps from the source material. 3 things you can implement this week, taken directly from David's model, as shared by the You Need Faith in Jesus team.
First one, vocalize your honesty. Following verses 1 and 2, just speak your real burdens to God, unedited, unpolished. Use your actual voice. Engage your faith in a tangible way.
Second, define your portion. Based on that powerful lesson in verse 5, consciously declare who God is, especially when you feel abandoned. Say it out loud. God, you are my refuge. You are my portion. Actively realign your heart.
And third, acknowledge weakness. Emulate the humility of verse 6. When you're facing a challenge, just admit to God that the situation is genuinely stronger than you are. That radical honesty is what positions you to receive the divine power that is made perfect in weakness.
And as we close, here's a final thought for you to mull over, connecting those last 2 verses. Think about this. If David, the mighty warrior, has to embrace his weakness, admitting he is brought very low, how does that inadequacy paradoxically unlock the greatest strength for public testimony?
I mean, think about it. If God only helps people who are already strong, well, then they get the credit for the victory. But if God delivers the person who honestly admits they are outmatched and at their lowest point, then who gets the glory for that bountiful deliverance? The Mishil ensures the credit goes exactly where the power came from.
We are so grateful to the You Need Faith in Jesus team for providing this specific, profound source material. It truly turns one of history's darkest moments into a timeless instructional blueprint for any of us facing a crisis today.
Go and apply the lessons of the Mishal. We look forward to diving deep with you again soon.
Keep seeking that understanding, keep gaining that knowledge, and we'll be here next time to help you unpack it.